we will be free. For when the rising tide is turned in every London quarter, Parliament comes crashing down with Robert's Rules of Order.
All right, we're ready for the 6.
Pass the bananas, yes.
Okay. Oh, I love it. I love it. You should know this.
If you don't we're in trouble.
If you don't know this, shame on you. This has been part of our debate, the great debate we had.
Excuse me a second. Scrape some real stuff here.
Yeah, the great debate. So you should know this. All righty.
Okay, I'm ready.
That was scary. All right. Ready? Okay, you're ready. If the bylaws authorize certain things specifically.
Yes.
A. Other things of the same class are thereby prohibited. B. Other things of the same class are authorized. C. By a 2/3 vote, other things may or may not be prohibited. D. By a 2/3 vote, other things may or may not be authorized.
Okay, give me those 4 options again.
Sure. And do you need the first sentence?
No.
Okay. A. Other things of the same class are thereby prohibited. B. Other things of the same class are thereby authorized. C. By a 2/3 vote, other things may or may not be prohibited. D. By a 2/3 vote, other things may or may not be authorized.
Okay, the 2/3 vote ones we can throw out the window because the way those are worded, it's badly described.
Plus, it's the bylaws.
Right, it is the bylaws, and that to imply those two would imply that you can amend them on the fly anytime you want.
Right, or suspend or whatever.
Have selective interpretation. That ain't happening. Don't think so. So the last two, which is the first one that says that A was what again?
So let me read the whole thing again for the thing.
Skip the last 2 choices, but yeah.
Right. If the bylaws authorize certain things specifically, A, other things of the same class are thereby prohibited.
Yes.
Or B, other things of the same class are thereby authorized.
Now, okay. I would say A, but I'll tell you why before we say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is my understanding that it's been a generally accepted rule of law over the years, and you can correct me on this because you're the paralegal and I'm not, that when a legislature puts words into a law, they do it with specific and intended meaning.
Allegedly.
There's a couple Supreme Court rulings on that, from what I remember correctly. Okay. And that because they are presumed, key word, but it's there, to do this, that they know what the words mean, and they specifically mean those words and not others. And if they want to include other things in an authorization, they have to explicitly list it. Otherwise, it's not allowed. I've always adopted that point of view on bylaws also, because when you have an enabling language, if you don't keep it locked down, you have the ability to make things ripe for abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm saying A.
Okay, A. You are correct. It is A. And do you remember where this came up in the Great Debate?
Which great debate?
Over
we had a lot of those.
Electronic convention.
Vaguely.
It came
We
up.
had a lot going on.
Yeah, it came up all the time in that because the bylaws specifically authorize electronic meetings for the LNC and committees.
That's right, but not
Which
necessarily
means
the convention.
Because it authorizes certain things specifically, other things of the same class, electronic meetings for conventions, are thereby prohibited.
Right, and that's why we had to do the end run with the special convention for our nominations.
Well, we didn't. There wasn't really an end runner. It was under the theory of impossibility.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way we got away with that.
Because it was impossible to do a regular convention.
And
which wasn't authorized electronic anyway.
Well, and, if we considered our goal was to nominate candidates, if we couldn't nominate candidates within the proper time frame, that was kind of the justification.
Right.
Not entirely the strongest, but I think plausible.
Well, we're not exactly in a normal set of circumstances right now either.
Okay, so this is under principles of interpretation.
Oh, yes, very much so.
So I'm going to try to see if that's in here.
It'll be in there.
But I mean, I don't know what it would be under. What is yours?
Content and composition of
See,
bylaws.
I knew it was called principles
of interpretation.
Oh, here we go. C, interpretation principles of. This just kept coming up so many times.
Okay, that said what in there for the index? What was that one? It said
interpretation. Principles of interpretation said C. Interpretation principles
Okay,
of.
now before you flip over to that, if you go to interpretation, principles of, and it says C, principles of interpretation, we're coming for you,
We're coming
Roberts.
for you, Hahnemann. Well, definitely that would be funny though.
Circular reference.
Okay, interpret. Where? How do you spell? Where? Hold on. My eyes are crossing.
Interpretation.
It isn't in here.
You're in here. Interpretation.
Interruption. Here we go. Interpretation principles of.
5668. That's what you're looking for.
It's the longer one. It's the one in the back.
If there had been a circular reference, we'd have been coming for you.
So 56.
68.
Oh, there's a lot of paragraphs in this one.
That's right here. Because it's.
Yeah, but it has subparagraphs.
Oh, God.
So
we'll back up a page.
That's another change. It did a lot of that.
There we go.
But that's
right there.
No, that's susceptible to two meanings.
Keep going. Sorry. You're in the neighborhood. There it is.
There it is. Right. So subsection 4.
Yeah.
So I read, right?
Yes.
Okay. There is a presumption that nothing has been placed into the...
Read the title.
Oh. If the bylaws authorize certain things specifically, other things of the same class are thereby prohibited. There is a presumption that nothing has been placed in the bylaws without some reason for it. There can be no valid reason for authorizing certain things to be done that can clearly be done without the authorization of the bylaws, unless the intent is to specify the things of the same class that may be done, all others being prohibited. Thus, well, we don't need to do that. It just says, thus, where bylaws might list certain officers, the election of other officers not named, such as a sergeant at arms, is prohibited.
Mm-hmm. It goes back to the specific thing of you do what you say and you say what you do. You don't imply anything.
Did the language change at all, or
no?
Okay.
No, it didn't.
I was just curious. No,
that's cool. No, it didn't change at all.
All right.
Because the basic, and this is something which we have gone around and around and around and around ad nauseum with the current LPCO chair and board, because they don't understand this fundamental application. If it says you can do it, you can do it. If it doesn't say you can do it, you can't. It's that freaking simple.
Well, libertarians tend to have a knee-jerk thing, though, that says if it isn't mentioned, then it's allowed. And they have just a gut reaction against if it's not mentioned, it's disallowed.
When you're... that raises a great point. When you're talking about the exercising of individual rights, bingo.
Well, plus though, there's another flaw.
If you're talking about the operations of a governmental unit, and a political party board is a governing unit, then you're talking the opposite. You want the premise for libertarians is for individual freedom and limited government, not unlimited government on top of all that. That's the key point.
I'd also argue a different way. It isn't that it isn't mentioned. In fact, when you're talking about the same class, it is mentioned because certain items were included, which means that class was thought of.
Yes.
And the fact that it didn't include the other things is actually prohibiting it by its omission. It isn't silent because it does talk about that class. Mm-hmm. If it was completely silent and didn't mention that class at all, then I would agree with then it's probably allowed.
One of the great arguments in law is the uses of the term, especially in the Internal Revenue Code, where this gets a lot of argument. Yeah, I know. Is the terms including, including but not limited to, and there was one other one which ties into those, and I forget exactly what it was. But the classic one, and I'm going to go down a mild conspiracy theory rabbit hole here, is the whole idea of income from whatever sources derived, including blah, blah, blah.
But not limited to?
But no, it does not say but not limited to.
Oh, then it's just that.
Yeah, exactly. But tax courts and regular courts have interpreted the word including in this section of Title 26 to be including but not limited to.
Then they should say not
But they
limited
also
to.
never list the sources from which the income is derived from, which is a whole different argument.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't really given that too much thought. I'm just telling you my
Joe
my,
Bannister has had a huge...
my gut reaction.
Has made a living talking about this, among other people.
Interesting.
So is one of the shifts guys.
See, I would think things not specific. Again, we're dealing with classes of items.
Yes.
Things not mentioned are excluded.
Yes.
Unless you say.
I would agree with you completely.
But fuck the IRS, man. All right.
Yeah, taxation stuff.
Favor! Let's hear the opposition side. Like a stubborn donkey's bray. All opposed? You say nay. Opposed! Opposed! The motion carries anyway.